Congratulations. Even with the housing market being completely down the drain and the economy in shambles, you somehow managed to score yourself a nice piece of property in the Dungeon of Fear and Hunger, a whole single prison cell. And not only that, you even managed to score it under market value, only having to pay $15,000 a month and the lifelong price of your dignity. But unlucky for you, due to some unfortunate crypto investments, you're a little strapped on cash. But lucky for you, there happens to be a couple other people traveling through the dungeon as well who could serve as your roommate. You just have to figure out the right person. First up is your best option, Dars. Being a noblewoman, she has a lot of money and a lot of intelligence, so she would be a pretty good roommate since she can 1. Pay the rent, and 2. Knows how to not screw things up. And her interesting background would make for some pretty decent conversation. Just be warned, she will never, ever shut up about her crush. On the downside, she's about as tech literate as I am actually literate. So don't be surprised when she inevitably tries to exercise your toaster or something. She also exclusively listens to 2010's white girl music on her phone on max volume too. But if you're capable of withstanding hearing Miley Cyrus for 13 hours a day, then she might be the best bet for you. Now let's say the constant racket of at best mid music is too much for you, then I suggest the next best, Khara. Now Khara is just as much strapped on cash as you are, but he does have a lot of skills, and as long as you're willing to join in on some of his shenanigans, then you'll probably be able to make rent, and at worst, you end up learning a bunch of really useful skills which you can use to gain employment elsewhere. And while yes, at the start he will steal things from you, once he knows that he can trust you and that you won't betray him, he will quickly become a good friend. On the downside, there's a very real chance he might entangle himself with some debt collectors and you might get caught in the crossfire. And on the neutral side, he really likes Cardi. Like he really likes listening to Cardi. But if neither of those two sound appealing, then why don't I suggest Ragnavaldir? Rag might seem intimidating at first, but he's a really chill guy once you get to know him. And while he may not have the money to pay rent, he more than makes up for it with his hunting skills, being able to drop grocery prices down to 0. But on the downside, that fur pelting that he's wearing is rotting, and it does reek of death and mortgage payments. He also doesn't really listen to any specific kind of music, preferring instead the sounds of nature, which is a positive or a negative depending on how you look at it. But let's say all your good options are already taken up and you're left at the bottom of the barrel. Well then might I suggest Enki. Enki is not paying rent. Not because he doesn't have the money, but because he doesn't want to, and because he doesn't have the money. The only real positive to Enki is that he's really smart, so if you get on his good side, you basically have a talking Library of Alexandria with you at all times. He also listens to Deftones and Radiohead. Make of that what you will. And since we're at the bottom of the barrel, we might as well also cover Lagarde. Lagarde is just Enki without the intelligence. Now moving right along to Chomer. Surprise, surprise, it turns out being a malevolent entity of the dungeon doesn't spare you from the housing market. Chomer, also known as Simon, is actually a pretty chill dude. I would know, we played Helldivers 2 together. He also cooks some pretty mean pizza. The only downside is his big old mauler arm, which might scratch you now and then. Next up is Pocket Cat, who is certainly interesting to say the least. He is decently rich, which means he's going to pay the rent in full so you won't have to pay anything. And he does make for some pretty decent conversation. The only downside other than being the Pocket Cat is having to deal with his nephew, who will constantly be playing lo-fi hip-hop beats and will scratch up the furniture. And finally, last, and also least in height, is the girl. She will be able to pay her half of the rent since she makes a pretty penny off of constantly holding Pocket Cat's nephew hostage. And while yes, she is constantly chaotic all the time, that can easily be satiated with an iPad. Just be warned, you will have to listen to her yap about skibidi toilet lore, so it might just be easier trying your luck on the plague-ridden streets. She also runs a semi-successful YouTube channel where she reviews different flavors of Play-Doh. Anyways, it seems like all your options are absolutely horrendous, and my personal suggestion is to take low-tier god's advice and try your luck in the next life. Anyways, that's it. That's the video. I am doing a McChicken review at 1,000 subscribers, so, stick along. Number go up, so, number will go up eventually. Yeah, so, that's all. Later.